Welcome to part 3 of our video presentation on chapter 10 devoted to project communications management. Part 3 talks about some general ideas and theories that you have to keep in mind and when you're managing communications in the context of project management. And also hopefully those ideas and theories and techniques will help you improve your own communication effectiveness. Now, the first theory or the first idea that we will talk about is the difference, the importance of face-to-face communication, and also the difference between face-to-face communication versus communication, as researchers say, using less rich media such as email or formal reports. So why is face-to-face communication important? Well, research says that in a face-to-face interaction, 58% of communication is through the body language. Okay, meaning how your body is positioned, what you do with your hands. Are your hands crossed? Are you making nervous movements with your hands? Are you using your hands to to show gestures to convey additional meaning? Then 35% of communication is through how the words are said, and 7% of communication is through the content or words that are spoken. Okay, so you see, only 7% of meaning is derived from the actual words that come out of your mouth. Majority of meaning is derived from your body language and also from your voice, how you say things, with what kind of emphasis, right? With what kind of intonation. That reminds me of episode in Seinfeld. I don't know whether you watched that sitcom, but it's one of my favorite ones. So there's an episode where Jerry, Jerry Seinfeld, the main character of that sitcom, he wasn't invited to a party by a doctor, by a dentist, and all of his friends got invited and he wasn't invited. And so he was kind of embarrassed about this whole situation, and he didn't want to face this doctor directly to ask him like why he didn't invite him to this party. So he asked one of his friends to kind of mention his name in relation to this party to see what the doctor says. And his friends didn't do a good job. They mentioned Jerry Seinfeld's name to this doctor, and they said like, is Jerry? They asked him like, is Jerry coming to this party? And then he said like, why would Jerry come? Something like that. So they relayed this message back to Jerry, which was a bit confusing. And then Jerry was like, but how did he say? Did he say, why would Jerry come? And why would Jerry come? So he was trying to figure out the emphasis, and based on that emphasis to kind of figure out that, what exactly is this doctor saying? Like, what exactly does he have against him, right? So you see, like, emphasis is very important. So think about it. Only 7% are the words. Now, if you write email, you understand that you're only writing words, right? You're not conveying your body language. You're not conveying your voice particularity. So you're not conveying many of the emotions. So that's why face-to-face communication is very valuable, because you can get all those nonverbal clues out of communicating with a particular person. Now, pay attention to more than just the actual words someone is saying, right? Because again, look at this statistics. Majority of meaning is derived not from the words, but from other things such as hands, body position, voice, tone, and so forth. And as you know, I mean, why you need to pay attention? Why those things convey a lot of information? Well, a person's tone of voice and body language, they say a lot about how he or she really feels. So basically, they convey feelings, and those feelings are typically hard to hide. Okay. So for example, if you're nervous, I mean, you can say something, "Oh, I'm not nervous," but when you say that, then your voice will tremble a little bit, and people will get those clues, right? So it's hard to lie with your body language unless you're a very experienced, special agent who is trained to pass like lie detectors and make that hide all of his or her real feelings and thoughts. So face-to-face communication is very valuable, to sum it up, because it helps you to get access to non-verbal clues, right? So your body language, voice tone, and so forth. So that's why, because face-to-face communication is valuable, you need to use it, right? So that people understand each other better, okay? Best is to have short, frequent meetings. They're more effective than those long, exhausting meetings that drag for hours. People hate those. I guess, innovation are the so-called stand-up meetings. Stand-up meetings means like you just quickly meet to discuss things without having like a formal agenda and introducing this agenda, taking minutes and so forth, because this helps speed up face-to-face communication. Now, some companies have policies preventing the use of email between certain hours or even entire days of the week. There are a few things to say about it. Like sometimes, it's just impossible to resolve certain issues and conflicts using email, and oftentimes emails are useless for conveying certain type of information. So you need to be mindful. You see, like it's very easy to send emails, and it doesn't cost a lot. But at the same time, you need to be mindful about it because of those two things. Because emails are easy to send and they don't cost much. People are sending a lot of them, and it gets to the point where, and I'm noticing this about many people, including myself, where people just don't read most of their emails. There are just too many. So be careful with how you use email. Or another example of negative or like ineffective email usage, like sometimes people are too lazy to really contact you to explain what they need from you, and they would send something to you saying for your information, or please assist, or please advise, right? And you always think, look, this person didn't bother to tell you like what he needs from you, right? So he's too lazy, or he doesn't value your time, right? So you're supposed to kind of spend 2 hours analyzing all those chains of emails to figure out what this person wants from you, right? So if you send something like that to a person saying for your information or please advise, then the person will say, look, I don't have time to waste. I mean, if you want something from me, then tell me what you want. Don't make me read like all those hundreds of emails that you're forwarding to me, okay? So I'm just giving you like one example of email being problematic and not used effectively. I mean, overall, you need to be mindful of the communication channels or media choices that you make. For example, certain things cannot be done over email or over voicemail. For example, mediating a conflict, right? I mean, you cannot resolve conflict over emails. In fact, I remember my boss, when he sees two people who start kind of fighting over emails, sending each other mean emails, he immediately sends an email saying, look, let's stop that. Let's stop sending those emails. Why don't you guys meet face to face and discuss this? And again, I've been like on all kind of sides of this equation. Sometimes you're angry at the person and you're sending those mean emails accusing the person of something or implying something about that person. And sometimes you meet face to face. And I think what happens face to face, first of all, it's a better communication channel. You can really understand what the person is saying, how he is saying that or she is saying that. And also, like, people are, email has this feature of anonymity where people kind of hide behind email, so it's easy to insult somebody over email versus face to face. So all those things lead to a situation when two people meet face to face, right? Then conflict is resolved. So try to resolve conflicts by a personal meeting. It's an excellent channel for resolving conflicts, but don't try to do it over email. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, overall, as you can see, meetings, they can be quite useful, in all kinds of situations, but you need to be careful with meetings. I told you before on this previous slide that you don't want to create an organization where all your employees do is sit in those long meetings to the point where most of their working time is spent in those meetings and they don't have time to do actual work. I know that employees hate that. They hate long, boring, useless meetings. So try not to overuse them. And there are some situations where email is appropriate and it's very effective. For example, expressing support or appreciation. So in addition to thanking somebody personally, you can create an email that is being sent to every member of your unit so that those people that you're praising in your email feel appreciated. They feel that you're recognizing them in front of everybody. Certain information, like if you're asking for information, let's say about like factual information like data or a report, again, email can be an excellent communication channel for that. So be mindful whether a particular channel is appropriate, okay? For example, I've met some people, for whom telephone is the number one choice for all kinds of problems. But sometimes it's hard to do things over the phone. For example, when it, once again, when it comes to transmitting factual information, right? Probably depends on a person what kind of learner he is. Like for example, for me, I'm more of a visual learner. If somebody wants to talk to me about data, I want to see it in front of me in a table or on a sheet of paper. I don't understand and remember things based on verbal communication. And yet there are some people think that telephone is the best way to convey and communicate with people. So be mindful which media, which channel is appropriate for which situation. Now, also keep in mind the person you are talking to. Like, here we have like different people, different personality types, and their different preferences. I think the most well-known classification of personalities, very simple classifications of personalities, in psychology are introverts and extroverts. Now, introverts are quiet people who are more analytical. They like to think. They like to reflect on things. They're quiet. They don't talk too much. Those are introverts, right? And then you have extroverts. Extroverts, people who are loud, who like to be among people, who want to be heard, who like to talk rather than listen, who speak first before thinking, right? So, for example, if somebody is an introvert, then you need to understand that. I mean, introverts are typically shy when it comes to public speaking or talking face to face. So don't try to put an introvert at the spotlight, right? He may not feel comfortable and he will be paralyzed and stressed out, right? So give an introvert a chance to explain things over email, while an extrovert may not be very capable of explaining himself or herself in a formal way. So meet an extrovert in person, or let that extrovert speak out, in front of you, or let him speak at an event, right? So keep in mind people's personalities. So look at those additional personalities and how to communicate with them. Also, you need to keep in mind that rarely does the receiver interpret a message exactly as the sender intended. I mean, even simple messages like that, like even simple instructions. Like, for example, if let's say there are 30 people sitting, let's say we're all walking together somewhere, and I tell you like a very simple instruction, we need to turn right. I mean, out of those 30 people, most people will turn right, but there will always be one person who turns left for some reason, right? Whatever reason. So you're saying right, and you're clear about that, but the person turns left. It has nothing to do with the person's intelligence. It's just human nature. I mean, those communication channels are not perfect. Maybe this person didn't hear me well when I said you need to turn right, okay? Or maybe this person doesn't understand English. Or maybe this person is tired or stressed out, or he is distracted because he's thinking about something else, right? So don't assume that people receive information as you intended it to be received. So just because somebody is sitting in front of you and this person is smiling and nodding doesn't mean that he really understands what you're talking about, right? And it doesn't mean that this person agrees with what you're saying. I've seen this so many times, like, you have a committee and people are discussing things, and there's one person who's kind of quiet and he's like, yeah, I agree with everything. And then all of a sudden, when everything is discussed and you're about to finalize your solution, he's like, oh, wait a second, I disagree with everything that you said, right? I mean, towards the end of the meeting, the person realizes what you're trying to do. Eventually, he gets it, right? And he's very upset about what you're trying to do, okay? So always probe people with questions, ask them like what they think. And from those probing questions, you'll get a sense whether they understand what you're talking about or whether they approve what you're talking about, most importantly. Of course, differences in geographical locations and cultural backgrounds affect the complexity of communication. For example, different working hours. If you're working on an outsourcing contract, right? Then while you're awake, the person is sleeping. While the person is awake, you're sleeping. Language barriers where people don't share the same kind of vocabulary, they don't understand your language that well, and also cultural norms. I mean, really, language is really the tip of the iceberg. Understanding somebody, it's not just about understanding the words that come out of his or her mouth. It's also about understanding like the other 90% of meaning, as we discussed previously, right? So sometimes people speak the same language, but they don't share the same cultural norms, and they don't understand each other, and it leads to a lot of frustrations and sometimes conflicts. Also, you need to keep in mind that as the number of people involved increases, the complexity of communication increases because there are more communication channels or pathways through which people can communicate. And all kinds of disruptions, distortions, or miscommunications are possible. For example, if you have n people, then the number of communication lines is calculated by the following formula: n times n minus 1 divided by 2. So for example, when you have 2 people, right, then here we have 1, then 1 times 2 is 2, then divided by 2 we have 1 communication line. If you have 3 people, you have 1, 2, 3 communication lines. But look what happens when you have 4 people. You don't have 4 communication lines. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 communication lines. So you see, as the number of people increases, the communication lines grow exponentially. Messages will be traveling back and forth from the original source to another source, and then from that source to this source. So all kinds of distortions are possible. So I think unofficially those things are called like rumors. Like when so you see like what happens like when you're not witnessing things yourself, when you're not hearing things from the first source, then most likely it's a rumor. Again, it doesn't mean that the person is bad and he's trying to make somebody look bad. It's just like nature, human nature. I mean, we're not perfect receivers and transmitters of messages, okay? So unless you're looking at the original source of the information, always take what people say with a grain of salt. Like in my work, I've noticed students a lot of the times they tend to have like, how should I put it? What would be like the good word? Let's put it like incorrect understanding of what their instructor is saying. Like oftentimes, like I have a student coming to me and saying, "Instructor so and so told me this, and you're telling me this." And at first, like when I hear that, I'm like, that sounds crazy. I mean, this instructor really said that. And then when I actually go talk to this instructor regional source, right? He will tell me something. No, I never said that. That's what I meant by that, right? So, and again, it's not that the student is doing it intentionally. Just like he is not a perfect receiver of information, and then he's trying to receive it, and then he's trying to put he or she is trying to analyze it, and then transmit it to me. So of course, like there will be a lot of distortions there. Some general suggestions for improving project communications: manage conflicts effectively, let people resolve conflicts. Again, you can use communication to resolve conflicts, and conflicts sometimes stay in the way of communication. So always address conflicts. Develop better communication skills. We're going to talk about it in a second. Like invest into your own self-training. Maybe go through a certification course. I remember Warren Buffett. He said that one of the most valuable things that he did was signing up for this Dale Carnegie course. And this course involved just basically learning human skills, how to treat people, how to speak with them, how to speak in public. And he said this was more valuable than any of the other diplomas that he received. Learn how to run effective meetings. It's a science, and there are many books about this. And overall, observe. I mean, in my career, I've have the pleasure of witnessing people who are extremely organized and effective, and I learned from that. I learned how to run those meetings effectively. Learn how to use email and other technologies effectively for communication, and use templates for project communications. We're going to talk about it in our later parts. As I mentioned before, companies and formal degree programs for IT professionals are out there. But they often they train you in programming languages and different technical skills, but they often neglect the importance of speaking, writing, and listening skills. As organizations become more global, those skills are becoming even more important because of cultural differences, language differences, and unfortunately, it takes leadership to improve communication. To say that, look, we're not going to accept subpar written or verbal communication. You need to invest into your training, into learning good communication habits and skills. But it's something that is very important that everybody needs to invest in. But it takes leadership to instill good communication practices within an organization. Okay, friends, so this concludes part 3 of Chapter 10 video presentation. Thank you for listening.